Welcome back inside the Now Morning Show. It is GIS week. What does that mean? Geographic Information Systems. To tell us a little bit more about it, let me welcome Professor Bishem Ramlal. He's a professor and dean at the University of the West Indies when it comes specifically to geospatial information engineering. And I also want to welcome Dr. Tricia Melville from the Ministry of Agriculture, Lands and Fisheries, who joined us. They both join us via Zoom. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
Not a problem at
Good
all. How are
morning.
we doing this morning?
I'm doing well, thank you. I hope all of you are well.
And Dr. Melville, how are you this morning?
I am okay and hope everything is okay with you as well.
All right, thank you so very much. Let me start with you, Dr. Melville. Can you explain to us what GIS is exactly?
Well, GIS is an acronym for Geographic Information Systems. So this week is actually Geography Week, and on the 20th of November is GIS Day, and it's
Okay.
actually the 25th year that it is being celebrated. So Geographic Information Systems, to say it simply, is the science of where. So I want to know where something is, what is beside it, what is around it, the relationships they have with each other. So basically, the science of where, the science of location.
The science of location. That's very, very interesting. Professor, in terms of how we use GIS today, how would you
Mhm.
say it's implemented and how is it used? The science of where, how is it used now? I mean, we see it in things like Google Maps, for example. I would imagine.
The United Nations has a saying that says that everything that happens somewhere. And therefore, knowing what is happening and why it's happening, where it's happening, it's important to support decision making and policy formulation and so
Hmm.
on. You know, Everyday folks may not realize it, but geographic information systems is in everything. It's almost like salt. When you think about ways and navigating using that navigation technology, when you think about Facebook and you check in, you would see some people say, "Oh, I checked in at C3," or you are sending someone a WhatsApp location pin, or even if you think in terms of Google Earth and searching for something, or trying to find a store located somewhere that you're not so familiar with. All of these applications are GIS based, and therefore we are using it all the time without even realizing that behind all of these applications would be the science of where and the science of location. And so geographic information systems is very much infused in our daily lives without us even realizing it.
Yeah. And those examples are perfect ways that we use it and we don't realize that we're using it. But Dr. Melville, how is the Ministry of Agriculture using GIS?
Well, the Ministry of Agriculture has been using GIS for more than 10 years. We have different divisions, so different divisions would use it in different ways. I will give you an example. For example, we have apiculture, which is beekeeping.
Right.
And we would have done a study a few years ago mapping the location of bee sting incidents. And it was very surprising to see there was a particular pattern. There was an actual line over 1,000 points, and there was an actual line across the east west corridor. So it gives us that visual as to where the incidents are. If we were to itemize areas to do trapping, it helps us to visualize easier. And this is information that we provide to the subject matter experts, because remember, GIS is actually a support tool. And we would provide this information to the subject matter experts, which would be
Hmm.
the directors of the divisions, the different scientists that they have on staff to actually make a decision. So it is that support that guides different aspects of the ministry to make different decisions that at the end of the day would assist members of the public. And that's just one example.
Yeah, and it's very interesting because it's things that we don't take into consideration, or we might take for granted the work that happens. Let me jump back across to you, Professor Ramlal. When it comes to the University of the West Indies, I know that we have the programs, the bachelor's degree and the master's degree programs, but do you use GIS to actually manage the campus itself?
Well, that's a good question. We have started using it. We have created a map, a campus map, but we are in the initial stages of developing geographic information systems for use for campus management, for facilities management. We have just started working on integrating geographic information systems with facilities management software that would allow us then to do a lot more in terms of decision making. So, for example, we can at when we want to change light bulbs, we would know based on the inventory of when the light bulbs were installed, where which building the light bulbs need to be changed and how many and what type and so on. And all of that could be managed using geographic information systems. But in addition to that, if a student wants to find a particular office, and based on where they are, they can do a search and say, okay, find Professor Ramlal's office, and then the map will navigate them and give them directions to walk to my office. So
Right.
those are some examples of how we can do such work at the campus level. But
Do
many
we,
other universities have already done that as well.
of course, but do we have enough professionals in this capacity, Professor Amal? Or do we need to
Well,
develop some more?
yeah, sorry to interrupt. Yes, in terms of capacity, local capacity, in fact, I believe is quite good.
Okay.
There are a lot of folks in Trinidad and Tobago who would have qualified at various levels, and the University of the West Indies offers courses, programs, in fact, for technicians, for specialists, for analysts, for GIS managers, and so on, all the way from a certificate program to a PhD program. However, if we look at other Caribbean islands, and the University of the West Indies must cater for students from across the islands. We have 16 countries that we are responsible for servicing. However, in many of these islands, there isn't a capacity to support um, the kinds of activities that are required. Jamaica, perhaps, being the exception. But a lot of other countries don't have that capacity. And so, what we've had to do is come up with creative ways to reach these people in their countries. So, we are working on virtual programs, online programs that could build the capacity without having the person spend the kind of money that would be required to come to Trinidad to rent an apartment and pay the fees here, and pay for their board, for food and everything else, so that it adds up to a lot of money. So we are working on much more creative ways to support persons in their homes or at work in their own countries.
Nice. And I imagine that the CSME would offer some assistance in that regard, with professionals being able to go to other places and also share their information. Dr. Melville, when it comes to community engagement, how important is community engagement when it comes to GIS projects? And can you maybe share an example of a time when you had to use community engagement to be able to assist the project that we're working on?
Okay, it's definitely very important, especially because even though you may have the location at particular points, the actual information that's going to support that, a lot of that would come through the community. For example, with the agricultural sector, with the farmers. But one example that we would have done would have been with the fisheries sector, and we had to map the fish landing sites. Of course, that's not information that we would have, and that's not information that some of the directors or the staff may have. So we had to reach out to the community, and we would have done what is called a participatory GIS mapping. And we would have worked with the fishermen to map these fish landing sites. So we were able to record the fish landing sites. We were actually able to map some of the areas in which they do some fishing. And that was information that the fisheries division was able to use for their own projects. So the communities is definitely a major part, especially with the Ministry of Agriculture, because a lot of our intents, a lot of our projects are geared towards support of farmers, foresters, fishermen. So the community engagement is extremely important.
Yeah. What are some of the challenges, though, Dr. Melville, that we see facing the GIS community and the industry in general?
GIS is heavily reliant on ICTs, and ICTs are expensive. So I would say one of our major keepbacks or one of our major challenges is financing of that ICT to support. The further we go in terms of digital advancement is the more space we need to capture data. Everybody's now speaking about drone technology, satellite imagery that requires a lot of storage. So that's one of our major keepbacks funding.
Funding. That sounds like the same cry of every other industry. One of the major kickbacks is funding. Professor Ramlal, how do you envision the future of GIS? What do you see coming out next? I mean, we have new technology emerging on a daily basis.
Yeah, GIS is really evolving, and I started with doing GIS in 1985.
Wow.
GIS was invented or developed in the 1960s in Canada by Natural Resources Canada by someone we call the father of GIS, Roger Tomlinson. And back then they used to use mainframes and they had dot matrix printers and so on. Now we are talking about artificial intelligence. We are talking about smart devices that are installed all over a city, for example, to have smart cities. We are using drones, and we can deploy drones quite easily to capture information that is very high resolution. We are now using LiDAR, which is a laser ranging technology, to collect a lot of information to create what are called digital twins. We are also using a lot more satellite imagery. And, last week only we were discussing the use of what are called cube satellites, small satellites that are 18 inches, just, about 25, 30 centimeters to be used, launched and used to collect data for islands like Trinidad and Tobago.
Right.
So I see GIS becoming very pervasive. It's going to be everywhere. It's like how at one point, word processing was limited to a few people. Now everyone would be using a laptop computer, a desktop computer to do word processing. GIS is moving more and more into your mobile devices, so that it's going to be a GIS in your hand to be used for whatever you need. It's not going to be impossible for most people to consume the services from Geographic Information Systems. So I see it becoming even more prominent.
Yeah, and I think we're already kind of there, because we have in the palm of our hands, we have the Google Maps, we have the Waze, we have, even like you mentioned before, all the various apps that we can check in on, generally speaking, as one form of GIS, and we definitely can continue to see it grow. So thank you both for joining us this morning and for sharing this information, and I hope you enjoy the celebrations this week. As you mentioned, is Geography Week and GIS Days coming up. So I hope that you guys have a great celebration, and thank you for sharing the information. We'll continue to check in with you to get more information about it.
Thank you very much. And just to say that the celebrations is going to be on Wednesday at JFK Auditorium on the campus, UE St. Augustine campus.
What time?
Thank you.
At what time?
It starts at 9 and finishes at 2.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And Dr. Melville?
Yes, thank you so much for having us, and we look forward to hosting everyone at JFK in collaboration with UE. And we also have a symposium on the second day. So the first day, it's an open day welcoming schools from Form 4s to Form 5. We're welcoming members of the public, professionals, just to see what we have to offer, what other ministries have to offer as well. And on the second day, there's a symposium or presentation by all the other ministries. So if you're interested to know what is being done in GIS in Trinidad and Tobago, I expect to see you on Wednesday and Thursday at the university campus.
Thank you both so very much, and do enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Take care. That's Professor Bisham Ramlal and Dr. Trisha Melville, both chatting with us about GIS when it comes to Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean, and of course the world. We'll take a quick break and we come back with story time, courtesy Zoom Zoom. Stay tuned.